time is 9 o'clock. I'd like to call this committee meeting to order. And before we get started, let's do a comms check. Do we have anyone joining us online? I know we have some members who are either behind or absent today. Do we have anybody registering online? Okay. If and when they do come up, if you could please advise us and let us know if they have any questions, hands raised, or are trying to get through at any point. I'd appreciate that. Okay, as we have quorum, we're going to get started with today's agenda for legislative modernization here in the House. And at this time, I'd like to do any requests for bill introductions. I'll start with the gallery. Do we have any requests to do committee bill introductions? Seeing none, we'll open it up to the floor of the membership. Does anyone have a request for the committee to do a bill introduction? I have a request for a bill introduction, and it is 25 RS 1061. This is an act concerning information technology, and it will deal with amending previously passed statutes, and in the course of that, repealing existing sections. Again, that is 25 RS 1061. Okay, if we have no further bill introductions, we want to turn our attention quickly, if we can, over to Ms. Terry Lois G. Mashburn. She's our guest speaker here today, and I've asked her here today to give us an informational hearing about a topic that she is passionate about. Maybe it is something that might concern your constituencies and some of the offices in your districts. So I ask that you please give your attention to Ms. Mashburn. I think you have the slide deck, is that correct, here? Hard copy?
On your desk.
And you'll also have it on the screen, perhaps, flipping through it as well?
Not on the screen.
Hmm?
It is not on the screen.
It is not on the screen? Okay.
It's on your desk.
All right, then we will follow along. Roger that. We will follow along here at the desktop, and Mr. Vice, if you can register who might have questions, if there are any, we will ask them at the appropriate time. And with that, Madam, could you please state your name and your organization for the record and get started?
Mr. Chair, I'm Terry Lois Mashburn, Register of Deeds, Leavenworth County.
Welcome to committee.
Thank you. Until the Notarial Act of 2018, not much had changed for notaries since the Roman Empire required client signature and notary stamp. At the same time, fraud tactics have evolved using technology to take advantage of our antiquated system. Through technology, entire notary acknowledgement blocks are lifted from validly recorded documents and placed in fraudulent documents. The fake is so good, you can't tell it's been copied. Next slide. From hundreds of cases, I emailed a few property fraud cases to you where true notaries have stated they never met the person, their stamp was stolen, or the signature was a forgery, usually all three. Quoting AARP, fraud losses jumped almost $8 billion in 4 years. We show we are losing the battle against fraud at a frightening pace. Now, more than $10 billion in 2023 alone. What happened to banks 10 years ago, from 10 years ago forward, is at the door of the real estate industry today. Organized crime is looking at title theft as easy money. Prison guards tell me they overhear prisoners teaching each other, just do a little paperwork, don't rob a bank. If you get a house and you get caught, there's no repercussions. We cannot keep doing what we've been doing to protect landowners. Notarial acknowledgement is required in my office before we may record a document. But who is watching the notaries? Bill Anderson, Vice President of the National Notary Association, said, "Notaries are victims in fraud too." Mr. Anderson wants this tool to make notary work secure. It protects notaries from becoming victims when their stamps and signatures are used in someone else's fraud. In 4 years of fighting fraud, I've only found reactionary tactics, until last summer, that is. Finally, one solution to keep fraudulent documents from being recorded arose. American genius again triumphs with the invention of new technology in an American company. With 3D liveness biometric camera technology, we no longer chase fraudsters after the crime is committed, but stop the fraud before it occurs. We have the potential to save state and county governments money, as well as businesses, when fraud does not occur. The next slide. The pilot project using a camera was conducted in the Dominican Republic at 3 Western Union branches with the highest fraud rate in their company. In 60 days, fraud dropped 70% without catching a single fraudster. The fraudsters simply refuse to commit their crime when the loss of their anonymity is threatened. The next slide. The proposed process changes are: first, every Kansas notary applicant shall, at the time of certification, be required to add a 3D liveness biometric picture at any Secretary of State authorized location. Fraudsters with nefarious intentions will most likely not get certified. Kansas state government will not retain any biometric pictures. Those are encrypted and held by a vendor anonymously, while the Secretary of State's office holds corresponding personal identity information. The two parts of the transaction are connected by a digital link, and without both halves, the biometric map is simply useless bits of information. Next slide, please. The second part of the bill implements Deputy Secretary of State Clay Barker's brilliant idea to have a two-tiered authentication for real estate documents. The next slide. The proposed workflow is, after certification with the Secretary of State's office, the notary has a choice. Do they want to notarize real estate documents? If no, the process continues as normal. If yes, they proceed using the 3D liveness biometric camera to capture the image of the person who's requesting their signature to be noticed. Within a very short time stamp, the bill says immediately, they take a picture of themselves. When their picture matches the picture registered at the Secretary of State's office, they proceed with notarization. They receive a unique authorization code. That code will be entered in a new blank in the notary's acknowledgement block, and the code will also be entered in the log book. If there is no match, the notary process stops. There's no authentication code that's given. The bill allows for notaries to charge an additional fee for two-tier authentication and receive their cost of their mobile biometric camera subscription. The next code, the code can only be used once. Therefore, fraudsters can no longer be able to lift an entire notary block from a valid recording and paste into their bogus document. Next slide, please. The process will protect notaries who are innocent victims from a fraud scheme and eliminate willing participants in sophisticated fraud rings. Without a valid notary, a document cannot be recorded in the Register of Deeds office. We succeed in stopping fraud. The third portion, next slide, please. The third portion is empowering a Register of Deeds. A Register of Deeds may be allowed research time if fraud is suspected. Then we are given authority to reject a fraudulent document. This would most likely pertain to walk-in documents only, as documents submitted through title companies, banks, and others would have already been through the notary verification process. This will not be a common occurrence. The next slide. One use of this technology to protect landowners is in my office. The Polsinelli Law Firm has created a self-imposed biometric lien form for Kansas and Missouri. We will begin to offer in Leavenworth County a service that landowners may voluntarily come in and request a lien filed with their 3D liveness biometric picture attached. Next, their parcel is then flagged on the appraiser's webpage, the hunting ground of fraudsters, with a bold statement: this property is locked for conveyance. Contact the Register of Deeds. This is my favorite part of our process. We take the fun out of fraud with this warning. It will frighten would-be fraudsters from attempting title theft, or we will catch them when they try. The owners agree to return and be photographed in the future at the time they wish to sell their property. A matching photo will release and unfreeze the deed. Leavenworth County, along with Platte County, Missouri, are the first county governments in the nation to use this technology. I applaud Recorder Wright in his diligent work to protect his constituents. The camera has no access to Leavenworth County's network, nor will it have access to the state's network. It only accesses the internet outside of the firewalls. The FBI recently warned title thefts are up 500%. FBI agent Denny said, it comes down to due diligence on behalf of the buyer, the real estate agent, the title company, and beyond. My new FBI title category is "and beyond." In the 2 weeks prior to Christmas, I had 5 fraud complaints. I sent 2 of those to the Sheriff's Department. The reason for bringing this bill to you as a citizen is to protect my neighbors in Leavenworth County as Register of Deeds. But in reality, every Kansas citizen owner, property owner, as well as insurance, banking, title companies, and many more industries could be able to slow or stop fraud when this bill becomes law, if their county officials have the desire to protect their constituents. Next slide. Kansas can begin to create a fraud-free environment with time savings by no investigations of sheriff or police departments, no title insurance payouts, no insurance fraud, no mortgage fraud. There can be millions in savings to businesses and restful nights for citizens. But most importantly, citizens avoid the legal costs of going through civil court to prosecute fraudsters when something does get recorded and the residence is lost. If every claim for the unemployment had been using biometric verification, the Department of Labor very well may not be out $700 million right now. It is time to stop this nonsense. The fiscal note for legislative research could be a negative value because the equipment is being offered free to the state, and savings in fraud never committed will be hard to calculate, but substantial when the average cost of one title insurance payout, according to American Land Title Association, is $147,000. Next slide. On the ranking of fears, people have fraud listed above terrorism. The wave of consumer support for more protection is extremely high. Your legislation could lead the nation in the fight to end real estate fraud. What you are doing here would immediately become model legislation for multiple states already looking for relief from the devastating cost of fraud. I thank you for your service to Kansas and for your future service to America with this legislation. I will stand for questions.
Well, thank you for that, Ms. Mashburn. I was trying to find out who all had questions for you up here. That was a great presentation, and if we can get your updated slides and drop those on the S drive, I'd appreciate that as well, okay? There's a lot of really good information, it sounds like, in here as well. I like to always start off the question and answer period, if we can, with our ranking member. Ranking Member Simmons, if you have any questions, we'd like to start off with you, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here, Ms. Mashburn. You talked about the Dominican Republic, but can you tell us about levels of fraud in the United States related to this issue?
Thank you for the question, Representative Simmons. The fraud rate is increasing, and in following the reports, it's usually at least a year behind. But as I stated, the FBI says it's increased 500%, and they're sending out warnings that we really need to be diligent in trying to prevent fraud. So this is not the be-all, do-all, end-all. I perceive this as a very good first step because I initially had only my office in mind. After presenting my idea to Deputy Secretary of State, his idea, it really expanded my horizons on how many industry players we could protect. I know I can tell you in my office, I lost count after 40 cases in 4 years.
Thank you. 500% is quite an impressive number. Do we know if that means 1 to 5? Or
It's
can you contextualize that a bit for us?
the last figure that I saw, without quoting the exact number, was over 9,000.
Do you know what year that was from?
2023.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr.
In my estimation, one case is one too many because I have to look in the face of a constituent when I hand them a deed. It's a fraudulently filed deed, and say, I'm sorry, you no longer own your house. It's horrifying.
Wow. And thank you for those questions, Ranking Member Simmons. I think that those are pertinent. I like, especially like the one where we're asking for the contextualization of it, and that's very well received, that one is too many. Fraud of this magnitude and scale and impact is something that, you know, it can't be tolerated, obviously. Let's see, Representative Droege, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the presentation. I had a couple of questions, if I could ask more than one.
You may proceed.
I was concerned about the privacy end of it. I mean, it sounds, the biometric cameras are, and they're encrypted, so it seems to be, it's going to be really private, but that's going to be one concern people would have is how secure is it? Because I personally am not very crazy about being on camera all the time and having my picture recorded somewhere. So can you address that a little bit?
Thank you, Representative. That's a good question, and one of the first ones I asked as I began to examine this process. What impressed me about this is that the state, the government, does not hold any biometrics. The camera is not an ongoing, continuous scanning. It's an intentional, focused look at the camera, take a picture. It's one picture. And that picture is not held at the government, it is held at the vendors. It's each individual biometric is encrypted. And the vendor I spoke with has been in financial protection for 30 years. So with the separation of the biometric from the private personal information, the state has that already in their current process of certifying a notary with their phone, their address, their name. The vendor wouldn't have that. They only have the biometrics on their end. They couldn't search for a name if they wanted to. They don't know who they have. They don't know where they live. They don't know what it's for. They only have a transactional code, a digital link to the Secretary of State's office that requested that picture to be taken. So I very much value individual privacy. That is the part of this vendor's idea that I loved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Another question with that is who made the camera? I don't know that that's, you know, we've had problems with Huawei in the past sending all that information to China. So I'd just caution that. I don't know how far you've looked into that. The other question I had was, so you have to have everybody biometrically recorded. Are we talking you just put a call out to the community, said come and get your face recorded for your land ownership? And how is that going to work? I mean, I can see a lot of foot dragging in that.
We expected that, Representative Droege. The bill calls for implementation by December of 2026. There will be plenty of time and notice with locations all over Kansas for notaries to be able to have their photo taken at any authorized Secretary of State's location. The cameras, as I understand, are on the vendor's network. The picture taken anywhere can be attached with that digital link to the individual notary public. So as to the creation of the cameras, I think when the state puts out the RFP, I I continually reference 3D liveness biometric technology because I take a picture of myself, it's my biometric, but those can be deep faked. You can hold up a picture, take a picture of it, and it looks like me, or you can have someone very close to me. With 3D liveness, the depth of your eye socket, the width of between your ears, the length of your chin is all unique to you. And with the liveness picture, it cannot be spoofed. It cannot be faked. So we will know exactly who it is. By taking a picture first of who's requesting to have their signature notarized, we have an actual picture of the fraudster. The sheriff's departments, all of the LEO agencies that we have shown this to, love it. If you have 3 eyewitnesses, you have 4 descriptions. But with this, the law enforcement agency has the actual picture of who the fraudster is, even if they don't know their name. Using a bogus ID no longer matters. It will track their behavior, not the fake ID they're using.
Thank you for that. I think you're in an uphill climb, though, with biometric and at least the United States not wanting to follow China to have. I would be reluctant to go in and have my biometrics put into anybody's computer system, no matter how safe I'm told at the moment. Thank you for your presentation.
I appreciate that. I will say one person used bomb material in their tennis shoe, and now millions of people strip before they get on an airplane. So fraud is increasing, and we are just trying to get a process started where we can begin to protect landowners.
And thank you both for that piece of conversation. I will advise the committee, just as a housekeeping note, when we have conferees here and conferees as well, so this is captured on record, please address the chair. Here's what I want to do. I want to make sure that as the chair, I protect our conferees in case there's a squabble. Not saying that you've had one or anything like that, but just for future reference. The protocol is address the chair. The chair will recognize whoever the member is and give you the floor to speak, or vice versa. And the reason for it is there have been times in committee that, you know, back and forths have gotten contentious, and it's one of the jobs of the chair to make sure that we quell that type of stuff. So just going forward, please address the chair and versus directly to the members, and members asked to be recognized. That said, let's recognize Representative Oropeza for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of questions, and I'll just start with the first one, start in order. My first question is leading up to Representative Jarvie's questioning in regards to where does the vendor store that biometric information? Is it within the United States?
Go ahead, please.
It's my understanding, yes, but I don't want to say that with total authority. I think the vendor would need to be asked that question. I've only talked to one vendor. I haven't put out an RFP.
I have an additional question.
Please,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. An additional question to that. I'm assuming if this bill gets a hearing, that we'll have the Secretary of State come and speak?
It's my understanding, yes.
When we, if there were to be a bill, and if that bill were to be heard, it would be pushed out, and all conferees who are either proponents or opponents would have the opportunity to register, provide testimony, either oral or written. The conferee today wouldn't be able to devise whether or not the Secretary of State's office would come, though.
Okay, and then I just have one more question, Mr. Chair.
Please.
My last question would be, you mentioned that the vendor said this would be free. I'm very hesitant to think that anything's free. So could you elaborate a little bit more on that? Thank you.
Madam.
Yes, in my office, I have 2 cameras. Those were provided at no charge. The vendor that I have spoke with had said that he would provide, when we discussed it, it was multiple locations around Kansas, and that was about 12 to 24 cameras, and he would provide the equipment with no charge.
Okay. Does that satisfy your questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please.
May I elaborate on one point?
Yes, go
The
ahead.
concept is that this is a public-private partnership. So the title companies, the vendors, the notaries themselves are business for profit. So a subscription fee for those entities They would be buying a monthly service for the cameras, but my county and the Secretary of State's office would not be buying equipment.
Okay. And Representative Orpeza, you had another question pertaining to this presentation, please.
Thank you. So in addition to that, when you talk about buying a subscription, so every subscription would be then linked to every register of deeds in the state, correct? They would have to have some type of subscription?
Not the Register of Deeds office. This pertains to notaries
Notaries, okay.
who are certified through the Secretary of State's office. Where the Register of Deeds come in is we would look and see that the authentication code was now on the new portion added into a notary's acknowledgement block.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your help. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions now from, let's see, Representative Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for coming for a committee. I guess my question would be, can you go in more detail on your slide that says empowering the Register of Deeds? So in your proposal, this would allow 5 business days, up to 5 business days, to research time if there's suspected fraud. Could you kind of elaborate what currently the Register of Deeds are doing versus what this proposal is offering, and then maybe some examples of the fraud that you've seen and why this may help you in your job?
Thank you for the question. KSA 58-2241 states that conveyance document brought in for the Register of Deeds must be recorded immediately. That gives me no time when I know absolutely for certain that the owner of this property, who's a friend of mine, has no intention of selling that property, or that a 80-year-old elderly lady was forced into conveying her property where the fraudster forged her signature in front of her. I have no opportunity, and following state statutes which mandate in my office, I record a document immediately. Fraud is getting so prevalent, we have to be able to put up some roadblocks. I don't expect that to be the norm. 85–90% of my recordings come in through e-filing, which means the memorandum of understanding in place with the company that is filing with me has already gone through state statutes verifying identification, and if this law is in place, the notary procedures have already occurred by the time the document shows up at my office. It will flow. This is not intended to be onerous to anybody. The notary public already out there takes a picture, writes down a code. The entire addition in their time flow is going to be a minute, 2 minutes. We want it easy, but we want it effective.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Howerton. Questions next?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Sedgwick County's already doing a little prevention, and I think you're familiar with that. If you could elaborate on that, and then I have a follow-up question, if that's okay.
Thank you. In Sedgwick County and Leavenworth County, we have Property Fraud Alert. It's a free subscription which notifies an owner when anything is recorded against their property. It's a wonderful program. When I took office 4 years ago, there were less than 1,300 subscribers. I have done 300 presentations in the public, educating them on what they can do to try and help inform themselves. We now are over 33,000 subscriptions. This is a very good start, but it's after the fact. It's reactionary. By the time you receive the notification, the fraud has already been recorded, which mandates you must go through court in order to get back your own property and spend maybe tens of thousands of dollars legal fees. Mr. Chair?
And thank you for that. Representative Howerton, please.
And that was kind of my point. What we're doing right now is after the fact, and it's too late, and it's costing taxpayers a lot of money because it's on their dime to prove that they own that property to get it back, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. I may have another question, but I'll wait on it. Thank you.
Okay. Representative Weigel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the information. A couple questions, if I may. First question is, every time I bought a house, I've had to pay for title insurance. How does that factor into this conversation?
Ms. Mashburn?
The, when we have shown this to, pardon me, the title person who goes through, I've lost the name, in the title company? The title companies that we've talked to like this idea. I showed this to American Land Title Association and the Kansas branch, Kansas Land Title Association. During the presentation, she interrupted me and she said, I love this because in the frauds that I've seen and been a part of in Leavenworth County, there's a perfect fraudulent ID. They do check the ID, and the ID matches the picture of the fraudster that's standing in front of them. The fake ID doesn't matter. They have all the correct information from a Georgia driver's license. The driver's license goes through the process, but it's not the owner. So by having a biometric picture of who the fraudster is, at least we can give the law enforcement a legitimate picture of who did this fraud. They know exactly who they're looking for.
You may follow, please.
We can follow up later. I have several follow-up questions about that. But my other question is around the two-factor authentication. So I have a lot of, passwords or whatever that I need to use two-factor authentication for. I don't have to use biometric information for any of them, and I feel like they're all very secure. I get a text message to my phone, or I get an email to a certain email account with a code. Was that sort of two-factor authentication considered?
It was not. Again, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. That's next on our list. In the frauds that we've been involved in, without having a biometric verification, you do not know you are talking to the actual owner. Emails can get hacked, phones can get hacked, but no one can hack your face. You are the only one with your face. So it's absolute authentication that this notary is the actual notary.
Does that satisfy you, Representative Weigel? Okay, fantastic. Representative Brantley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here today, too. I have a question. If I'm a notary, what would this cost me as a fee or anything?
Mr. Chair?
You good?
I cannot answer that with certainty. I've heard many different options that it could be a fee per transaction, it could be a monthly subscription fee, but with the bill authorizing a notary to do an additional charge if the extra service of two-tier authentication is necessary, they would not be out extra money. Our hope is that they will have more business and they will be able to not only recoup their fees, but help their business model.
Any follow-up with that? Okay, and we'll recognize our ranking member Simmons for the second time, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you again, Ms. Mashburn. Do you have any idea? Well, I have two questions. One, do any other states currently have this in place, or would Kansas be the first?
Kansas would not only be the first, but 15 states are lined up waiting for model legislation. So this is a total shift in the mindset. Recorder Wright and I truly hope that we can start a change in America that will absolutely protect homeowners. It's not been done before. It's brand new.
Thank you. And if I could build on Representative Drogi's question, do we know who may be liable should this information be accessed by an outside company? And to provide some context where I'm coming from, I'm thinking about companies like 23andMe, where people have voluntarily submitted their personal information, and now these companies are at risk of closing, and no one is sure what's going to happen to their faces, to their DNA, and there are questions about liability. Has that come up in your discussions at all? Who would be liable? What damages may be paid, and by who?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, you may totally answer that question because that was one of mine, but please proceed.
In conversations with notaries, they have to buy errors and omissions insurance. But if what seems to be a trend in court cases is when the notary's name and their signature stamp is, the notary stamp and their signature are used in a fraudulent document, the victims are suing the notaries as well, totally innocent victims. This process would actually, we foresee lower insurance rates, because now then, if a notary is pulled in unknowingly into a fraudulent situation, they have followed the process. They have taken a picture of the fraudster. We have that picture to know who to go after, and they've validated themselves. Fraudsters love to hide in the shadows. They do not willingly give up their face. That is why in the Dominican Republic, not a fraudster was caught. When they saw the cameras were being used, they simply walked out of the line and left. No fraudster was caught, but the fraud dropped. And that's what we expect. The reason for the first step in scanning every single notary is it's so easy to get a notary stamp now in Kansas. Many other things I would love to see in place, but by scanning them, the notaries are on notice. Your face is going to be attached to every fraud document you would knowingly sign. They're not going to sign it willingly.
I still would like to know who would be liable for the punitive action, though. Would it be the state because it's mandated?
I'm sorry, Representative, I can't answer that question with any authority.
That's okay, thank you.
It's a good question. I'll follow up.
Yeah, if you could look into that, that'd probably be most appropriate. And thank you for that question, Ranking Member Simmons. Did we have any other questions from the body? Yes, Representative Weinkel, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make sure I'm really understanding the issue here. Can you just, I don't have a background in this, can you just really plainly walk through how does this happen? Like somebody says, I want to fraudulently claim this house, and then like what do they do? Like exactly what do they do that happens?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I think there's some value added in just doing that walkthrough, walk the dog on that one all the way through so that they can understand exactly what is the issue that's being presented, how prevalent it might be, and what is the way that it's being addressed right now, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Graceland is the most famous home probably in America. It came within 2 hours of being auctioned off, only because the true notary stepped up and said, I never met Lisa Marie Presley. That's not my signature. I did not notarize that document. Was the fraud stopped? Fraud takes many forms. In sophisticated fraud rings, a fraudster inside of a bank will fraudulently release the mortgage so that at the time of closing, the fraudster purporting to be the true owner gets the entire sum of the house. So by having the focus on authenticating who the notary publics are, Graceland never would have happened. The fraudster's face does not match the stamp that she used. So that attempt would have been thwarted. Every document that was recorded in my office has to have a notary public acknowledgement. If it's a fraudulent notary, right now I have no authority to reject a document, even when I know it's a fraud.
Does that help answer the mail for you?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not entirely. May I ask a follow-up?
Please do.
So let's pretend I am a fraud and I want to go claim property that's not mine. I just create the paperwork and steal the notary sign from another digital file and put it on there and send it to you?
Yes, correct. We have a title company we're working with who said 6 notary stamps were stolen in a 3-month time period. The reason that in my office I intend to put this deed is frozen for conveyance is because it's mandated. Land records are public information. Fraudsters go, they research which document that they want, which property that they want to steal. They create a bogus deed, and they either draw in an innocent notary public or they fraudulently add a notary public acknowledgement. The fraudsters know how easy this is. I'm trying to sound the warning bell. It's only going to get worse if we continue on the same path. We have to start putting up roadblocks to protect landowners. Otherwise, it's going to increase even more.
Thank you for that. Did we have any other questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Ms. Mashburn, I want to thank you for coming here today and giving us this information, this hearing. Again, there are some questions that you fielded from the committee members, so you know that this is not quite there yet. That said, if you could please provide us with the updated slides, and if there's any information that was asked of you that you wanted to follow up with, you can please get it over to Ms. Diane. Ms. Diane, does she have your email? Okay. And she'll push it out to the whole committee. Thank you for your time here today. Appreciate
Mr. Chairman, committee members, thank you for the time.
All right, committee. Thank you all for the good questions that we had there. We're about to get out of here because, again, I believe the language is a well-organized meeting. But I do have a bit of homework for you before we meet again. We're going to go through a scrub up of the agenda going forward. There's some things that we may be working out. There might be some joint committee hearings with the Senate as well on some sensitive items. And if that, when that shakes out, once we get that registered, we'll have the opportunity to advise you, make sure that we go into the protocols the right way in advance. If and when that happens, whether it be just our committee or if we do it in a joint setting. That said, I would like for the committee members to just think about, and we want to have a discussion, a couple of things. Number one, a brainstorming of what would it take in your estimation to bring this building, this organization, i.e. the Kansas Legislature, to paperless fashion. And I'd like to do that in shortest order. By shortest order, I mean by January of 2026. So I will be having that discussion with you as well. We'll also be going around and talking to our various members on both sides of the aisle about what are some of the things that they would like to see modernized here in the Kansas Legislature, as far as how does it pertain to interfacing with our system as legislators, here in the building amongst each other with our staff. Also, stakeholders of being your citizens, how do they interface? What is their feedback? What would be some things that they would suggest to make it easier, more modernized? I think we're 25 years into the new century. Yeah. We also want to look at what does it take for those things to happen that are necessary and proper that might be a legislative fix or not. Let's identify exactly what the lay of the land is, what needs to be done as appropriate, and I want to have us galvanize this particular committee to get after that. So the homework would be brainstorming and coming back with your list of either options, opportunities, suggestions, and if you can research it, the roadmap ahead that is feasible. And I commend you over to KLRD as well as LAS and our reviser staff to make sure that the things that we come up with are couched in sufficiency, legality, and common sense as well. That said, do we have any questions from the committee about what I've just spoken about? No? Okay. Next committee meeting will go on Wednesday. Our vice chair right now, I want to thank our substitution vice chair, Chair of Tax, Adam Smith, Representative Adam Smith. Pray for our regular committee vice chair. They have come down with a little bit of a bug in the family, so he couldn't be here today and decided that he didn't want to get me sick either, so I appreciate that. And if there are no questions, going once, going twice, thrice, and sold. Committee is adjourned. Thank you very much.